Hey, what's up, Real Faith Podcast? This is Zach Walker, and I wanted to introduce our special episode today. Pastor Chris is away this week, spending some time continuing to grow as a leader. And this episode that we are posting today was an interview that Pastor Chris did with Tim Alexander, who just has this unbelievably motivating story of how he fought his way back from a debilitating accident. He serves as the motivational coach for the UAB football team and has accomplished truly some amazing things despite some really hard circumstances in this life. I believe you're going to be encouraged, you're going to be lifted up, you're going to be motivated to go out and to live your life. So Pastor Chris will be back next week. Thanks so much for listening today. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Real Faith Podcast with me, your host, Chris Goins, a podcast featuring real talk with real people about God, theology, and life. Our goal, authentic, vulnerable, and raw conversations on a variety of topics with a view towards looking at what God's Word has to say. These conversations will help you apply your faith in God's Word to the real challenges of life. With that, let's jump into today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us for the Real Faith Podcast. Hey, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. By the way, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to reach out to me about any episode, you can email me at the letter C, Goins, C Goins at the letter A, the number 2, church.org. And by the way, I know this episode is going to inspire you. So I want to encourage you as soon as possible, share it with someone who needs to keep dreaming, keep believing, keep moving in the direction of those dreams and beliefs, because today's conversation is so inspiring. I'll set it up like this. At least 3 times in Deuteronomy chapter 31, God challenged his people, be strong and courageous. At least 2 times he challenged them, don't be afraid. 1 time, do not panic. Another time, do not be discouraged. Evidently, strength and courage are 2 of our greatest needs. Fear, panic, and anxiety are constant threats. And discouragement, well, it's a deadly adversary, and it can completely take you out of the game. God says, be strong. And the word strong there can mean to be strong, to grow strong, or, I love this, to make firm or hard. Today, you're going to meet a really, really strong man. I'm talking about strength that comes through physically, mentally, and spiritually. Listening to Timothy Alexander and his story reminded me of a recent book I read by David Goggins called Can't Hurt Me. Now, David is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL. He is an ultimate marathon runner. The dude is crazy gifted. And I must warn you, in case you go out and get the book is filled with some incredibly strong language, but his story inspired me. In the book, David talks about his daily ritual of looking at himself and speaking hard truth to himself, of what he calls calling himself out. And then he challenges us, call yourself out. He writes this, nobody likes to hear the hard truth. Individually and as a culture, we avoid what we need to hear the most. This world is messed up, and there are major problems in it. But then David looks at us, and David says this, your life isn't messed up because of, and then David lists several real, actual problems that can totally derail a person's life. These aren't make-believe problems, they're real problems. But David says, if any of that stuff is stopping you from excelling in life, I've got news for you. You are stopping you. You're giving up instead of getting hard. David wants us to know we can rise above every actual problem or challenge in life. And then David says, tell the truth about the real reasons for your limitations. And you'll turn all of that negativity, which is real, into jet fuel. Those odds stacked against you will become a runway. Oh my goodness. I actually listened to the book tape in the gym as I was working out. And when I heard this diatribe, this inspirational talk, I marked it, went home, read it in the book, transcribed every word of it, and I've actually reread it several times. And when I heard Timothy Alexander share his story, I thought of that quote. Because Timothy had more to deal with, more pain, actual pain, life-altering pain. He had more of that to deal with in the span of 1 year than most of us will get in an entire lifetime. Somehow, this man didn't cave. Remember, I said he's strong. He did something, one of my favorite poets described it this way. He said, he hardened his heart with hope. And that's what Timothy did. That's what he still does. We talk about so much in this podcast. You get to hear Timothy's story. You get to hear how God is using this guy now. Again, share this with a friend. Make sure you listen to the last 10 minutes where Tim brings it all home. With that said, here's Timothy Alexander. Thanks so much for joining us for the Real Faith Podcast. Hey, make sure you subscribe. Do it right now so you never miss an episode. Also, rate and review on whatever format you're listening. That really gets the word out so that more and more people can listen. Our desire is to add value to the lives of people just like yourself. I'm so excited about our guest today. I have with me in the studio Timothy Alexander, Director of Character Development for the UAB Blazers Football Team.
Yes,
Timothy.
Sir. Honored to be here with you. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity and for granting me this opportunity. It's an honor to be back here at A2 Church. The last time I was here was for the men's fish fry, and we had a great time. I didn't notice that these men, that a bunch of firemen and some men can get together and fry fish like that. That was awesome.
We had a great time.
It was a great time.
Well, man, we are honored to have you, Timothy. And you are an inspiration to so many. Mm-hmm. You've been inspiring me for a number of years. You've inspired our church in the past. You inspire a team of football players that reaches even far beyond football. So let me tell the people a little bit about you and then have you jump into your story.
Okay.
In 2006, Timothy was a student, talented, highly sought after high school football player, D1 prospect in Alabama at Birmingham's Irwin High School. A tragic automobile accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. He's not been able to physically walk for more than 13 years. For those of you, by the way, listening to the podcast and not viewing, Timothy's upper body tells a different story. He's got these guns that are amazing. And through diligence and determination, he's worked with people like Natalie Shannon of the Dreyer Physical Therapy Institute for more than 10 years. And through that diligence and determination, Timothy, I'll speak for myself. I know this was a moment for me. Mm-hmm. When UAB football came back, you were at that first game and you actually stood, walked, and presented the game ball.
Yes, sir.
Oh my gosh.
Sir.
It was 45,000 people were in the stands and they were freaking out. And then the video went viral.
Yes,
it was amazing. Now you serve as the Director of Character Development at UAB. And by the way, we'll get into the story after a while, but since I last saw you, you had your girlfriend with you.
Right, at the time.
Yeah.
Now I'm married 2 years later. Yes, sir.
That is so cool, great. Man. Well, Timothy, it's an honor to have you. Hey, for those of us who've not had a chance to meet you, mm-hmm. I'd like to go all the way back and have you describe sort of that early history of Timothy Alexander, mm-hmm. where you grew up, your life before that transformational accident in 2006, maybe even a few snapshots of your career as a high school student mm-hmm. athlete. Can you just give us that glimpse?
Yeah, well, again, thank you so much. Well, my name is Timothy Alexander, as you heard, right here from Birmingham, and I grew up actually right here in Ansley, Alabama. I grew up in Ansley, and my mom and my dad were divorced when I was young, and we moved from Ansley to Tarrant, then to Centerpoint, where I played at Irwin High School. And while at Irwin High School, I was an athlete. I got introduced to sports because I knew sports would allow me to work on being disciplined. I knew sports was a outlet for me to go out there and to find my place in this world. I didn't come from a lot, but through hard work, I was able to work for a lot. You know, I tell everyone I was that kid, that single parent kid. My mom was raising 3 young men, and I was going to school on free and reduced lunch, you know? Yeah. So, but again, I still had it all, but I still had it all because I had love, right? And my mom always taught me that regardless of what you have, it can still get better. You just got to work for it. I can't give you the things that I want to give you, but if you work hard and you get it and God blesses you and gets it to you, you'll learn to appreciate and value it for yourself. And so that's something that just really sat with me because, again, I'm in a school. I'm at Irwin High School. I'm class clown. I got a lot of friends. And, you know, at that time, I'm living the life. I'm living my dream because I know I'm an athlete. I have it, right? But leading all the way up to that, I went through a lot of different things because I didn't grow up with a father at home. So I was defiant. I got in a lot of trouble. I thought my life pitied me because I didn't have what most people had. But I didn't really know. I'm just a child, right? At that moment, my mind is not able to be mature. I'm a child. I'm going through these things as a child. But again, my mom always kept that foundation of faith and belief in my life. There were days where I know we didn't have it, and out of nowhere we had it. And my mom would break down in tears saying God did it for us and God came through. You know, he may not come when you want him, but he's right on time, right? Yes. And so I had a lot of right on time moments, and that's something that just really stuck with me because even in my worst days, when I didn't get my prayers through, when I know because I'm out here just living, I'm thinking because I'm living a hellacious life, God doesn't really care about me, but he did because my prayers still got answered, right? Yeah. And that just really took a toll on my life. And I just made a decision in high school, like, man, I really want to get this football thing a try. And so I tried to get on the straight and narrow path, doing the right thing. And my senior year in high school, it's supposed to be one of the best years of my life, but it's actually the worst. Wow. My grandmother passed my senior year in high school. My brother, who was my hero, passed my senior year in high school. Oh my house burned down my senior year in high school. And I'm like, man, why is all of this happening to me? Yes. And on top of that, on one of the best seasons of my life in football, where my coach tells me I have the opportunity to go and play for any school that I want to go and play for, I'm in a severe car accident that left me brain dead and paralyzed from the neck down. After a huge football event that we had, we was actually going against an undefeated Gardendale, and we ended up beating Gardendale, and that was a dream come true, and we was able to make it to the playoffs. And I'll never forget jumping in my coach's arm. My coach says, you'll be able to go to school. And so I remember running home, getting home, and my mom is in the living room because she didn't come to the game that night because it was very tough for her because she would always sit at the game with my middle brother. And so she decided to stay at home because this is all in the same year, right? And so my mom is watching highlights on the news and crying, and she hugged me, and I hug my mom, I take my thumbs and I wipe her face, and I say, you know, Mom, it's okay. I'm going to make it to the league. I'm going to earn an education. I'm going to do something for myself and for my family, right? Wow. Because as a young man, you want to provide for your family, right? Yeah. And so after that, you know, I stayed out that night. I partied with the friends. We had a big party that night. I come in home late, and my mom told me I shouldn't have been out all late because I'm supposed to take my ACT that morning. After that, I go, and we're going to the Magic City Classic that takes place in Birmingham, Alabama every year. Yes. It's actually be postponed into the spring now due to the pandemic. And on the way to the Magic City Classic, my friend fell asleep behind the wheel. And out of 3 people, I was the only one that was hurt. And so I went from walking one day to rolling the next, right? I went from being the talk of the town because I was a star athlete to being the talk of the town because doctors were saying I'd never walk or talk again. Wow. And so, of course, not only am I hurt, everybody's hurt. And all I can think of in my mind is I don't want to die. I don't want to die because I knew I wasn't ready, right? And not just because I wasn't living the life that I should, but I'm like, I'm still saying, I don't want to die. I'm too young. I'm thinking I still got a lot of living to do.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget waking up out of a coma after I'm telling the firefighter, I don't want to die. And he tells me to squeeze my finger because that let him know your strength. I remember waking up out of a coma, just looking around in the room, and I saw my mom sitting by the bed, and I mumbled, "Ma, Ma." And my mom walked up to me, and tears was coming out of my eyes, and I can't move. My face is taped down. They got everything going on. And that tear comes out of my mom, wipes my face, and I mumbled, "Ma, if I have to be like this the rest of my life, you might as well pull the plug." Right? I'm ready to go at that moment. And my mom looked at me and she said, my son, blink your eyes if you can hear me. And I blinked. And my mom said, you will live and not die and proclaim the works of the Lord.
Yes.
And so at that moment, when I didn't have anything to hold on to, I can only hold on to what I heard. And so what I'm trying to get everybody to understand is my life is a life of a young child who always held on to what he heard.
Yeah.
And if we are really reading our word as we should, the Bible blesses the hearer and the doer, right? The one who hears and do will be blessed in whatever he does.
Yeah.
But the one who hears and doesn't do is like a man who looks in the mirror and forgets what he looked like.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, when I forgot what I looked like, Ma, if I got to be like this, you might as well pull the plug. She said, I'm going to give you something.
Yes.
Blink. And I blinked. I responded to the command.
Yes.
And she said, you're going to live and not die. In that moment, my life changed.
She began to quote God's word over your life.
And what I heard, I held on to.
Yeah.
And it changed my life because I'm ready to give up, but she spoke life into me right then.
So in the days following that,
Right.
Timothy, I understand that it became very difficult for a period of time, that you battled with depression
Right.
and some suicidal tendencies.
Right.
How did you pull out of that? What was the turning point for you?
Well, that was very, very tough because, again, I'm not a person, I don't need a lot of people talking to me, right? I don't need a lot of people talking to me because I'm big on my level of influence. You can't have everybody speaking into your life because some people will lead you the wrong way. And so at that moment, here I am, I'm trying to build, but what I'm thinking in my head is different than what I'm hearing and what I'm saying out of my mouth.
Wow.
Right? Again, what I'm thinking in my head is different than what I hear and what I see and I'm saying.
Yes.
And so I just began to really just give it to God. At that moment when I was depressed, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. The doctor was saying there's a 5% chance. I'm 17, being very vulnerable. I'm 17 years old. I can't control anything.
Yes.
I'm having to wear Depends. People tell me when it's time to shower. They have to shower me. I can't really do anything, but I still have my mind, right? And so as the verse says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yes.
At that moment when I couldn't find anything, all I could find was the word in my heart that I can get better. And the reason why I always revert back to my mom is because my mom is what really transformed my life, who really helped me from not being depressed and suicidal, right? And she began to write passages and scriptures on the wall, and she would always be there for me while I'm depressed and suicidal.
Wow.
She would always be there and watch, but she would always tell you, you're okay while I'm here. But you got to get to that place for yourself that you'll be okay when I'm not here. Because anybody can be strong when they're around everybody.
Yes.
But can you be strong when it's just yourself?
Wow.
And so I took that downtime to get to know myself.
To become stronger internally.
On the inside.
Yeah.
So today, 14 years later, I don't deal with depression. I don't deal with suicidal thoughts. I don't deal with anxiety. To me, if I'm not walking today, faith says I'll be walking tomorrow. And if I'm not walking tomorrow, faith says I'll be walking the next day. And if the next day leads to the next week, faith says, well, it may happen the next week.
Yeah.
Because I have understood, as we talked about, that this race is not given to the swift nor the strong, but the one that can endure. And so after the third time I tried to take my life, I said to myself, it must be a reason I'm here. The doctor we didn't have insurance to go to a doctor. We didn't have insurance to go see a counselor. We didn't have insurance to go see a psychiatrist. Because when we got discharged, all we had was thyself, right?
Wow.
And so I had to work on thyself from the inside out. And so when I listen and I understand about, the old Greek gods, Aristotle used to say, know thyself. That makes a lot of sense to me now. But then now I also understand when you really work with the one that's within you, it'll change your life. And I'm just a representation of what faith and belief looks like. That's the honest thing.
So you mentioned you having to work on yourself.
On myself.
To change things. What did that process look like of working on yourself?
I tell athletes all the time, you don't just get better on the field, you get better off the field. I was telling my friend who just got his new personal trainer, I said, you're just not going to see results working out with your personal trainer. You get those results when you're with yourself. More work, more results. Less work, less results. You got to keep working. And so when I would go to therapy, I've always been the one to be present in whatever I'm doing. Because moments are memories that lead until tomorrow, that give you something to live for. And so I remember going to therapy, and I would try to do an exercise at the beginning of therapy, but the results wouldn't show up until the end of therapy.
Wow.
And when they showed up at the end of therapy, they'd say, okay, we'll see you the next day, but you need to practice this through the night. And so I remember when I was able to feel the tingling of my feet just from staring at my feet, I would go back to my hospital bed and I would stare at my feet all night.
Wow.
And I'm looking at my feet with my mind saying, move, come on, you can move. And I saw my toe move, and that excited me. I got my results.
Wow.
And so I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. It's kind of like right now, if something was to happen to you, God forbid, and we don't have to knock on any wood, you would go to therapy and they would bring a mirror in the room and they would say, Chris, we want you to visualize your arm moving. Well, most people would visualize it, try to visualize, and if they move, they would want to stop doing it. They would never try again. But me, when I didn't have any movement, but my arm would start getting hot, I knew something was behind my arm getting hot. So I would be in my room staring at my arm until one night I'm in my room. I got all these verses in the room about by your stripes we were healed.
Yes.
You God to give you what you asked for. I got all these things. And so I'm just reading them His word before I do my therapy. And I'm in my bed, I'm staring at my shoulder, and I'm just saying, man, come on. You can do it. You can do it.
At that point, you had
nothing.
No movement even here.
No, I was paralyzed from the neck down. I have nothing.
Oh my goodness.
I'm mumbling. We're trying everything. I got a neck brace on because, again, broke my neck, so we can't really do a lot. We're trying to get movement and everything back.
Wow.
And so I'm in the room down at UAB Spain Rehab where I still go back and walk the hallways and mentor.
Yes.
Because I made a promise to God, if you get me out, I'm going to come back and at least try to inspire people so they can get out if they want to get out, right?
Yes.
It's a big if, right?
Wow.
Just being truthful. And so I'm in my room and I'm staring at myself and nobody's in there. The TV's not on. And come on, you can do it. I'm staring. And my shoulder, boom.
Wow.
And freaked me out. And so I started doing this and my heart and the nurse, what's going on? And boom, I'm doing this, right?
Oh my goodness.
I'm trying to move. I'm bankhead bouncing. Now I'm doing this and it shot over and I'm able to move. And
this happened instantly.
It happened at night. It happened at night. I'm just hanging out in my room. The nurse, well, we got it. The doctors will be in. It's probably about because the new doctors came in at 5 a.m. I wake up early and get up early. I don't really, I wake up all through the night because when you're in the hospital, those nurses and patient care techs, which I thank God for them,
yes.
They come in every 15, 30, 45 minutes.
Yes.
So I'm always up. And, we was excited to show the doctor the next morning. And so the doctor comes in the next morning, and he asks me to move. She asks me to move. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She asks me to move. and I'm not able to move.
Oh, wow.
She asked me to move again. I'm not able to move again. And she said, what we expect that to happen is something called, but it's muscle memory. You will get some movement and some feeling back, but you got about a 5% chance. And I remember as clear as day, because faith had been established. I asked my doctor, and I can quote her name right now, but I don't do it for her, for her reasons, right?
Yes.
I asked her, who told you that, right?
Wow.
And the only reason I knew about who told you that, because you remember when Adam hid from God and he said, I was naked, and God said,
Yes.
who told you?
Yes.
On my wall, my mom had wrote, who told you you can't be healed?
Wow.
So I just, again, went and said what I saw, and she couldn't tell me anything. Mm-hmm. And she went from telling me, well, you know, I can't tell you what can happen, but I can only tell you the chance. I can tell you that I once was blind, but now I can see, and I can see a little bit better because of these glasses. And I'm saying to myself, man, if you was blind and your sight came back just a little bit, regardless of how paralyzed I am, if feeling come back just a little bit, to God be the glory. This is what I'm going to do.
Yes.
I'm going to take this 5% and I'm going to apply faith, right?
Amen.
And we'll be 100%.
Amen.
And when I come back, to God be the glory.
Amen. So when did you start recovering your upward mobility and strength and movement?
So this was after so after they told me I had a 5% chance,
Yes.
That's when I ended up being discharged. Right after that, it was nothing else they would be able to do. And that's where my journey started, right after that moment. After I got discharged from Spain rehab, I went home, and that's when the faith and the belief and everything picked up. And so what everybody sees today is a result of belief in the unseen, when no one was seeing me.
When nobody was seeing you, and nobody but your mother,
But my mother
was cheering you on.
And my mother, again, she was stewarding my mind. She wouldn't, if you was to come over to my house and you even look like you were sad, she wouldn't let you come in.
Wow.
If you even looked like you was gonna cry, she wouldn't let you come in, because I was so observant to people. I paid attention to people. Because if I'm looking happy and you come in looking sad, now I'm trying to figure out, why are you looking sad?
Wow.
Now it's making me sad.
Wow.
Right?
So your mother wanted to even create an
Of
environment
positivity,
Yeah.
of faith.
Yeah.
And now, as I talk to my mom, it's still things the doctor told my mom that she never told me, because she said if I would have told you, it would have killed you.
It would have destroyed your faith.
It would have destroyed my faith.
How long did that process take for the upward mobility? I
It
mean,
took me
right now,
about 2 years, right?
About 2 years.
Yeah, because I had my car wreck. Well, actually, I had my car wreck in 2006, and I didn't start school at Wallace State Community College until 2008.
Wow.
Right, so it took me 2 years to get everything back.
And people need to know, when we talk about upward body strength.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about everybody starts college with a college dorm, with a college bed.
Yeah.
I started college with a hospital bed.
Wow.
In a college dorm.
Wow.
On diapers and Depends, just going after my dream.
Wow.
Right? I didn't have any, I had movement. I couldn't move, but I wasn't as big as I am right now. It was starting my journey. I joined up. I had an amazing counselor, Yolanda Spencer, Cynthia Murphy at Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and they provided everything I needed to be successful. They provided everything I needed to go out there and maximize my opportunity. And it was about me believing in myself. And so I'll never forget, when I wanted to go off and start my journey, because I was cleared to go back into being society. I could go back, and I was a wheelchair user now. Feelings came back. I have my strength. Hey, he is a paraplegic. He is paralyzed from the waist down. Some feeling may come back, but again, it's only a 5% chance. And so I took that and just ran with it, Pastor. Honestly, it's been so long, I forget I'm in a wheelchair sometime. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
Right? I hear footsteps when I walk. And so it took me for about 2 years to really zoom in on who I am and whose I am. And to me, because the Bible changed my life, that's my favorite book. People ask me, what do you read in the Bible? What's your favorite book? The Bible, right? Because it's showed me that it's truth.
Yes.
And so I was reading about the 10 lepers, and he said, go and show yourself. And as you show yourself, you will be healed. And so if people got to see me in a chair so I can get my healing, then here I am. But I learned to not be moved by what I see, be moved by what's next. And that's faith.
Let me ask you this, Timothy, because you said a few minutes ago, and then you gave us that powerful description just a moment ago. You said, if I'm not healed today, it'll be tomorrow. If not tomorrow, the next day. What gives you that kind of resilience? I mean, this dogged faith that refuses to give up. Is it God's word that
that's it.
Stabilizes you?
That's all I have. I mean, tomorrow's not promised. And it was a place in my life when I was in the hospital, I did not know if I was going to make it to tomorrow. Mm-hmm. My mom I found out what was going on through me through hearing my mom pray, because she never told me anything. Mm-hmm. Again, when I was lying on my bed mute because I had a trach in my throat where I could not talk for a while.
Wow.
I couldn't really talk, but I could hear. I remember they would come in my room, they would put a Sharpie in my mouth and make me move my head up and down and write out what I was trying to say on the whiteboard, right? But faith is what healed me. And so when someone said, I'll see you tomorrow, I would stay up all night so I can see them tomorrow because I was afraid to go to sleep.
Wow.
And so, again, what really allowed me to be where I am today is what I heard. Again, blink your eyes if you can hear me. And I blinked, and my mom said, you're going to live and not die, but proclaim the works of the Lord.
Boy, I think you're reminding us, Timothy, of if we're speaking over our family, if we're speaking over our friends,
it.
And we have to make sure we're saying
it.
The kinds of things your mother was saying over you.
And again, I could not say it because I couldn't really. I found out that they said I have a traumatic brain injury. You know, I suffered some brain damage, so I didn't even know where I was. I was losing memory. It was bad. You know, I'm just now waking up and I see my mom, right? But I'm not able to talk, and I just mumble, if I be like this. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And she said, no, you're going to live and not die. And again, I started moving in that direction and the positive things that I was hearing. I mean, it's powerful, but it's simple. I'm just a believer. I believe. I couldn't read the Bible and not see results. I just couldn't do it.
Oh, I love this. Now, Timothy, you started this determined process whereby you're going to come back physically. You recover mobility in your arms.
Right.
Get to Wallace State.
Right. I get to Wallace State. I start off at Wallace State because of my brain injury. I had to retake my ACT and go through these different things. And I made a 13 on my ACT. And I took my ACT before I had my car accident. Made a 13. Wasn't a great test taker, right? At all. And I have to start Wallace State in remedial classes because I had to go through some testing before I went to school. And so I had to start off my collegiate journey, starting off taking math 098 and reading 096. The special needs classes, that don't even count. And so I remember struggling with those classes. And I remember calling my mom, I want to come back home. I want to come back home. She said, you're not coming back home. You're not coming back home. You're going to finish. I want to quit. Math is too hard, Mom. They got me in the reading class, and it's hard for me to read. When I read, my brain shuts down, right? She was like, well, you got to figure something out. So we started figuring out. I started taking verbal tests. I started finding out, okay, this is how my brain worked, getting my brain developed. And so, make a long story short, I started off at Wallace State as a special kid in 2008, and I graduated as a special kid in 2010. In 2010, I graduated on the dean's list, and in 2010, because I was so in tune and immersed in my life, I looked back and I said, man, no one really starts how they finish, and you never finish how you start, right?
Boy.
That came true in my own life. And so all I did, Pastor, was start using my life as your own example.
Yes.
So I don't have to look to this person for an example. I don't have to look. I look at my own life. And I was shocked. And I said to myself, man, if I can go back to school, start off in special needs classes, but graduate on the dean's list and found something in communication that I love and find my gift and understand me speaking and using my voice is what's going to allow me to make a difference, allow me to do something for myself and for my family. As long as I give God the glory, then that's what I'm going to do. Amen. And so the anchor says, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to work because I graduated and I started working, right?
Yeah.
And I started working for Allstate. And I worked at Allstate, and I loved Allstate. I had the best manager in the world, Miss Vicky Fields, at Allstate, and we worked, and they loved me. I had got promoted when I was at Allstate in about a month. They couldn't find anybody like me with with energy, and I never forget the HR lady came up and said, can we get more people like you? I said, yes, you can, but there'll never be another Timothy Alexander. And so I'm still trying to figure out my life.
Yeah.
At that moment, I was so on fire, and I'm still on fire right now. Just had to relight my fire this past Sunday because sometimes when you deal with a lot, it makes you want to forget what you've heard, and sometimes you have to relight it, right?
That's right.
And so be refreshed, right?
That's right.
And so what I was doing at this moment, before I would eat, we get an hour for lunch, and I was really searching and really seeking because I'm like, life is great, but what's next? I always want to know what's next. And I went outside to pray. I had just started understanding that prayer does work if you pray.
Yeah.
If you spend some time and not only to just pray, but to really just pray and go after what you pray for if you got the right motives.
Yeah.
And so I go outside and I go out there and run because before lunch, me going around the parking lot is me running. And so I'm just out there doing this. Yeah. Going around the parking lot. But in my mind, I'm running. I'm telling God, thank you. And I see this water fountain. And it's in 2800 Corporate Drive, right up here in 280. Yeah. I see this big waterfall. And I go up to it, and I love water. I love being by. It's like my prayers get answered when I'm by the water. And I go out by the water, and it's kind of cloudy. And I said, God, if you are real, when I start praying, I want you to breathe on me and just let the sun come out and just shine on me. Like if you're real. You said, if I believe, you shall accompany me with signs, wonders, and miracles. This is my daily devotion. I had a 365 daily devotion. I read it every day because I wanted to find something that I could believe in and just immerse myself in it. Like we do with our shoes. We believe in our shoes, and guess what we do every morning? We put them on. Yeah. Right? And so I wanted to find something that I believe in and that I could immerse myself in. And I bowed my head to pray, and the wind started blowing, and the sun came out, and I looked up like, oh my gosh, this is real stuff. And I said, God, what is it that you want from me? What do you want me to do? I'm not this holier than thou guy. Yeah. You know, I'm not a religious guy. I just love you. I love my music. I love my life. I've been around you my whole life. I want to know you. What do you want me to do? And God told me, it's time for you to go back to school and show people that God is faithful. Mm-hmm. You're going to go back and you're going to play football, and you're going to join a Christian-based fraternity, right? And I'm like, okay, right? I'm like, I don't know how to start. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I followed my dream. The difference between most people and me is if somebody hear that and think, oh, that's crazy. But me, I said, God, I'm going to show you how crazy a believer I am.
Awesome. That's awesome.
I walked back into work, and I wrote my 2 weeks notice, and I sent it to Miss Vicky Fields. I did it. I applied for UAB on the job. She sent me a message, and she said, log out, meet me in my office. I went in her office, and she said, tell me about this 2 weeks notice you just sent me. I said, I'm going back to school to play football. She said, well, we can work with you part-time. Well, you can work part-time, and you can go try to play ball.
Yeah.
I said, Miss Fields, I would love to, but God didn't tell me anything about work when I was speaking, and he told me this is what I'm going to do. I said, I would love to come back, but when I do come back, I'll be working with Allstate and speaking at Allstate because God's going to take me all around the world.
Wow.
And she said, I believe you, and she hugged me, and I worked for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I enrolled at UAB, and I went to orientation.
Yeah.
Before I got to UAB, I wrote a letter to the head coach. At the time, it was Coach Neil Calloway, but the letter did not get to him because he had to end up resigning. I was at orientation, and I asked one of the girls, her name was Kiana. She ran track. She was my orientation leader. I said, hey, do you know where the football office is? She said, yeah, we'll pass it on our tour leaving from the UAB building. I said, yeah, because I wrote a letter to head coach, but I never got a letter back. And she said, yes, it's because he resigned. We're not sure where the letter went, right? She was just speaking generally. And so stories go, days go on, and I'm in school, and I'm still just following after my dream. And I see a work-study job open up for me to work in the UAB ticket office. And I said, man, if I work for athletics, that'll get me closer to football. Yeah. Because I'll be selling tickets. And so I go and meet at the time with the AD. I go and meet with Brian Mackin, who is our AD, whom I love, and I meet with Matt Wilt, which is my boss, and he said, yeah, we'd love to give you the job. And so I remember being at work because I was working at Bartow Arena, and people, anytime they came in the ticket office, they would say, hey, man, do you play football? And I'm like, y'all don't see this wheelchair? I was like, what, you in a wheelchair? And one guy was like, we can't see that wheelchair on this side of the desk.
Wow.
You have to change the way you see yourself, son. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. So people started coming in. Hey, you play football? Yep, I do. I play football. I changed the way I see myself, right? And so I'll never forget one day the head football coach, Coach Garrett McGee, he comes into the office. And I tell him, hey, I would love to meet you one day. No, actually, I get invited. I'm sorry. I get invited because I'm working for the ticket office. I get invited to our Christmas dinner. And I found out the head coach, Coach Garrett McGee, is going to be there. Yeah. And I say to myself, this is my time. At the Christmas dinner, I go up to him and I tell him, God told me I'll be one of the best players to ever come through UAB football history. I'll be one of the best players ever. He says, hey, I want to see you come to practice one day. We'll talk about it. He said, you're brave. I said, yes, sir. Well, it took me about 2 weeks because I didn't have the brave to come out to just go up to his office because I just thought he was just telling me something. Yeah. And so one day he walks in to the ticket office and he says, hey, I thought you told me what God told you. You didn't even come and see me. Did God really tell you? I'm like, yes, sir, he did. He said, well, you haven't came and see me. I said, well, Coach, when can I come see you? He said, tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. I said, 5 a.m.? He said, 5 a.m. I said, yes, sir. I said, I'll come if you give me some football gear. He said, call Travis, we'll get you some gear. I called the guy, he gave me some gear. After I got my gear, after I left out of the office, I called my mom and I said, Ma, you remember the night before my car accident, I told you I was going to make it to the league, earn an education, do something for myself and for my family? She says, yes, baby, are you walking right now? Wow. I said, not yet, Ma. Yeah. But I made it on the football team. At that moment, I wasn't even on the football team. Yeah. But I knew that this was God's time. You see, most people think success is being at the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. That's not success. Success is you knowing you're at the right place at the right time. I knew I was at the right place because I knew this is where God sent me, but I had to hold on to it. Yes. It wasn't about everybody else believing in Joseph's dream. It was about Joseph believing in the one who gave him the dream.
That's a good word.
And so I held on to what God gave me. And so everybody thought it was crazy, but I'm like, hey, it is crazy, but I'm going to be the one to be a crazy believer. Yes. And I went out to practice the next morning, and the guys were walking out on the field, and I know they got to be thinking, this guy's crazy because it's 5 a.m. and he's out here crying. I got tears going down my eyes because it's so great. It smells so good to be back out here on this football field with these D1 collegiate athletes. Yeah. every young man wants to go to college. Let me clarify, every young man, that's an athlete.
Yes.
Whatever it is, he wants to go to college to be, he or she wants to go to college to be a collegiate athlete.
Yeah.
But very few get that chance.
Right.
And very few get that chance to do it on the Division I level, which is the highest level.
Yeah.
And so here I am, this close to my dream that no one can see but me. And so I'm thanking God for it already, to the point that it's brought tears to my eyes, because I know he's already done it. That's why I'm here at UAB in the first place.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go back to school, but God sent me to school. I had it made at All-State, right?
Yeah.
And so coach said, skill guys on the line. I look at myself and I said, I'm a skill guy. And I got out there, wheelchair and all. The boys start running around the track. I start running around the track.
In
right?
your wheelchair.
In my wheelchair.
Yes.
We didn't make the time. Coach said, skill guys back on the line. They start running around the track. I start running around the track in the wheelchair. At the end of the practice, coach asked me to break it down and come to his office. I was so excited to hear what he had to say that I'm flying off the field. I'm jumping over curves. I done found out how to go down steps in a wheelchair, and he's laughing, and he gets in there and he says, young man, what was that today? I said, coach, what you saw today was a young man that made a promise to himself after he was pronounced brain dead that he'll never walk, twist, or talk, or be able to do anything on his own. That if his dream came back and he was healthy physically, spiritually, and mentally, he would go after his dream. Mm-hmm. All you saw today, coach, was me going after my dream, because my senior year in high school, my house burned down. My senior year in high school, my grandmother passed. My senior year in high school, my brother died after he told me he loved me, and I had all the potential I needed to make it to the NFL. That's what you saw today. He looked at me and said, young man, to find a young man that has enough faith and courage as you have, I want you to be a part of this team. Wow. It was on that day I became the first paraplegic in D1 history to ever receive a full ride in football, to ever touch the field.
Man.
And our message that year of that team was, to much is given, much is requirement. You know, when you're out in the public, when you're working with schools, you can't just boldly express. The Bible says you will know a tree by the fruit that it bears. Yeah. I don't have to tell you what John 3:16 says. I could just say, for God so loved, he gave.
Yes. Yes.
And if you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, we can learn more about it if you want to know about it.
Yeah.
But that's just how I roll, right?
Yeah.
And when I saw that happen, that was another God is faithful check.
Amen.
So today, no one can tell me God is not faithful, because if he has not done anything else, I got to look a list. I got my God is faithful checklist of the things that he's done.
So you keep track of that faithfulness.
That he's done.
Now that was Garrett McGee, by the way,
sir.
the coach who really was so influential.
Yes, sir.
And then Coach Clark came
in 13.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that when Coach Clark came, I thought that he would get rid of my scholarship because I'm taking up a scholarship. But it was guys like J.J. Nelson, Ty Long, Austin Brown, J.P., Kennard Backman, Bud Pruitt, Jackie Williams, our leadership guys. They said, Coach, and I was talking about this to the team this morning. It's giving me chills. And the guy said, Coach, you can let anybody off this team you want, but you got to keep our heartbeat, Timothy Alexander, on this team.
Oh, man.
And he kept me on the team, and he made me a leader. And guess what my role was? Not leading on the field, but leading them on and off the field.
Wow.
Being what they needed to see. Just reminding them that to much is given, much is required.
Yes.
It was not a day that went by and said, guys, when you go out there to run up and down that football field, you ain't running for yourself. Because some of you all will give up on yourself, but don't give up on me. You got to be my legs. And so I began to play. I began to motivate. And so they wanted to know, Coach, what do you want to do? I want to be an inspirational speaker. I want to be a leader.
Yeah.
Well, you got to get your grammar. You got to get your language. You got to get your communication better. And that's why I still stumble a little bit. But guess what? It's okay.
Yeah, it is.
That's the beautification of the gift, right? That you can see my weakness, but then you can see, man, he's strong, right?
Yes, yes.
That's what it's all about.
And Timothy, you went to work on your gift because I believe it was 2015. Didn't you get your master's?
I got my master's
in communication.
I got my
right?
master's in communication. So I went to school at Wallace State Community College. I went for criminal justice, and because I was a juvenile delinquent, and I wanted to really help those that delinquents that helping youth delinquents, right?
Yeah.
Juvenile delinquents. And I got that degree and became certified latent examiner. I can clarify and classify fingerprints, and found out that no one in the world has the same fingerprint. I'm like, man, we're all really unique.
Yeah.
And so after that, I went to school because I knew I had a troubled path, but I had a story to tell. So I double majored in criminal justice and communication management because I wanted to be able to put my life together and manage my life in a certain way in spite of it all, to seeing now what I've done in spite of it all. And so I graduated with 2 degrees, in criminal justice, communication management. And then the following year, after 2014, I graduated with my master's degree in communication management. And this is in the midst of them shutting down our football program.
Right.
Our football program was shut down, and I'll never forget, we know when they shut our program down, after we went 6-6, it was the best record we had ever had under Coach Clark. We go 6-6, and they shut our program down. And I go in the office, and I ask Coach Clark, hey, Coach, do you love me? And he looks up and he says, of course I love you. And I said, Coach, well, if you love me, will you stay? He said, Tim, I'll stay. This is after Justin Kraft went and talked to him. I said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to bring this program back. I said, because I believe in you, Coach.
Wow.
I believe in your leadership. And I know for a fact God sent me to this school for a reason. God has his hands on UAB. And if you go back and look at all my tweets and my posts, it was always God is faithful and God has his hands on UAB, because no one knew, but I knew. And I was telling God, you did not send me to this program for it to shut down.
Yeah.
Right? And so the heart did not come from the program being shut down. The heart came from looking at my teammates, how their life started going downhill because they could not play the game that they love. And it reminded me on how my life went downhill, right? When
you couldn't play.
When I couldn't play.
Yeah.
And so here I am able to heal 120 guys. And so I said, this is how I play. This is how I run up and down the football field. And so we created a movement, the Free UAB Student Organization. We got with Justin Kraft, Natalie and Associates. It was great. We got with the vocal few. We got with our boosters. We got with Ever Faithful, Ever Loyal. We got with the UAB family. We got with Birmingham, and we helped raise over $48 million in 6 months, bringing our program back.
This is such an amazing story because I remember during that period, you were one of the voices really speaking for the restoration of the UAB program. 6 months, $48 million.
Right. And this was, in that time when they shut it down December 2nd, I told everybody, when we'll be back, not only football will be back, but football, bowling, and rifle will be back. Wow. And when we come back, we will compete for championships and we'll be bowl eligible. Football will be bowl eligible our first year back. And everybody said, you're crazy, right? Marty Smith came down 2 years later and talked about, hey, man, everybody thinks you're crazy. You're talking about UAB is going to go bowl eligible first year back and they're going to win a championship, and y'all have a brand new team and haven't played for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
We was shut down for 2 years. We couldn't. We came back. They shut us down in 2015. We came back in 2017.
Yes.
Our first year back, we went bowl eligible our first year back. I told them when we came back, you wouldn't see a guy roll out of the tunnel. You would see a guy walk out of the tunnel. For 2 years, I practiced learning how to walk again.
Yes.
Just to give my teammates something to hope for, that if you can believe it, you can see it. And so I did therapy on the football field with Dreyer. Through an interview, with them saying, now that the football program is shut down, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know, because I was enjoying being on the team because it was giving me therapy to learn how to walk again. Now football is gone, therapy is gone, but God had a plan. Dreyer PT called and said, we'll take a chance on you. And I said, okay. And they gave me this little 5'2" therapist.
Yes.
That I asked, do you think I'll walk again? And she said, if you believe you can. And I said, no, do you believe I can? And she said, I can't tell you what God can't do. God can do it all.
Yes.
And when she said that, I said, oh, it's going down, right? It had nothing to do with Miss Kathy, who was my first therapist at UAB,
Yes.
who I'm still in relationship. She was the first person ever there to get me to stand. I just was not able. I guess it wasn't my time then.
Yeah.
But years later, 10 years later, a whole decade, I'm able to take steps and walk out of the tunnel. And the story went viral.
Yes.
Landing the story in the hand of Ellen DeGeneres, Bleacher Report, House of Highlight. I'm on ESPN at the facility. And it was just a beautiful moment. And everybody asked, how did you do it? I just simply told them, God is faithful. Faith without works is dead. It was nothing else that I could say.
Yes.
I couldn't take the glory. What you see is a young man that's faith-driven and understands if you want something, you got to have faith. And after faith, you have to work because faith is a participation sport.
Yes. Well, I remember in those days hearing an interview with Coach Clark on the radio, and they were asked about you. And he just talked about how we're going to keep this guy. He's so critical. So after that, you became Director of Character Development.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean? What does that include? What are you doing there at
So
UAB?
with Director of Character Development, again, I help work with our athletes on and off the field. It's Coach called it 3 hats: community outreach, career placement, and we do our development. So what we do, we want them to graduate, right? We want them to have careers, but we also want them to be character in action kids every single day.
Oh, man.
Character should always be in play. Leadership should always be in play. So it's career and it's community, and it's give back, right? We give back. We really work on them understanding, hey, because you get this opportunity, you have to do something with it.
Yeah.
Right, we specialize working with our athletes on and off the field and just really getting them to see that there is a life after football. But while you're here, you maximize it. Work on becoming a great man. Work on becoming a great father one day, a great businessman, whatever it is that you want to be. And when you get to the end, you'll be able to say it's all worth it.
Yeah. I read that one of your desires is I try to, and I love the terminology you use, walk these players through life. And so you're just building into these men.
Every single day.
Wow. In fact, you were on the field today.
Right. That's why I told them, I apologize. We was on the field today. We're getting ready. We're getting ready to start fall camp. NCAA has been so graceful to give us some days of walkthrough. I think we get about 10 days just for walkthrough. And we was on the field today, and I just yelled to them, make it count while you can. Make it count while you can. Have fun while you can. Do it while you can. Because you're here, maximize while you're here. Because it's presence in being here, right?
Yeah.
It's presence and you understand that you have to be where your feet are.
Yeah.
And so that's just what we tell our guys, to get them to understand that you can be here today and gone today. So while you're here, take advantage of it while you're here.
Wow. So, Timothy, I'm going to read some statements.
Okay.
By you.
Okay.
And I'd love for you just to expand on these.
Okay.
We don't need it to be easy. We just need it to be
possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
nothing that I do is easy. It's not easy just trying to stay positive. Even though I've been going to sleep the last 14 years with hope that I'll be walking in the morning, but I still do it. Sometimes you got to psych your own self out. It's not easy to do it. It's not easy to be the 1 out of the 99, right? It's not easy to say it is what it is, but it's about what you make it. It's not easy to do that, but we don't need it to be easy. We just need it to be possible. And because it's possible, I can keep moving.
That's powerful. Another statement. You said this was said to you by a trainer. If you believe something can happen, then no is not an option.
No is not an option. My guy, Chris Finley. Yep, no is not an option. You just got to set your mind that no is not an option if you can believe it.
Wow. So, Timothy, as we bring this to a close, man, just a few minutes with you just so inspires me.
Yes,
I feel
sir.
so much faith and courage. Who inspires you? Whose success story really fires you up?
A success story that really fires me up is my friend, young lady Emmy Nichols, that I wrote about in my book, Ever Faith, Forever Loyal. This young girl was getting ready to have brain surgery where she was getting a brain tumor removed, and the doctor told her that if they do this surgery, she may not make it. Well, her last wish was she wanted to meet me. right? And so I go up to her room in Children's Hospital, and she says, I've been the biggest fan of yours, and I love you, and I support you, and I've just always wanted to meet you. She's told me what would happen, and she said, but I told the doctor that I won't die. I'll just live through Timothy Alexander. And when she told me that, that broke me to tears. Mm-hmm. And so I had a God is Bigger bracelet on that I was granted to by my friend Kim, who passed with cancer. That was over the God is Bigger bracelet movement. And I gave her this bracelet, and I said, you're not going to die. You will live. You will be fine. And then when you get out, you call me. And that young girl believed that. And I remember the next day waiting to get that phone call. Her dad called me crying. And I remember thinking at first, oh my gosh, he lost his daughter. But he was crying because his daughter was alive.
Wow.
He was crying because before the surgeon before the doctor did surgery on his daughter, she said, hey, put this bracelet on because Timothy told me I was going to live and I want to live. And you can't do surgery without having this bracelet on that he wore. And so that girl now is about, 17.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
No, she's not. She's 16.
Wow.
And just has really changed my life.
Yeah.
And we still talk. I used to go eat lunch with her at school, and just has really changed my life. And so that inspires me. When I see athletes say, Coach, you was right, that inspired me. Yeah. My wife inspires me. My pastor inspires me. You inspire me because you can believe in someone that at the beginning I didn't even believe in myself. And so I'm fueled by people that I've been able to come and connect with that says, your story has inspired me to do this.
Wow. Now, I want people to hear a little piece of a story that happened right there in 2017 as well. Because what made the press was you standing up, you bringing out that ball when UAB football was back.
Right.
But behind the scenes, while you were rehearsing to be able to walk that day, you were also rehearsing something else. Can you give the people a glimpse of that? Because it's beautiful.
Yep. So and in spite of that, one of the biggest things that I wanted to do while in college was meet my wife. They say everybody finds somebody in college. And so I wanted to find somebody, and I held God to his word, and I wrote it down and made it plain, and it didn't linger, it didn't delay. And it did delay, but the harvest came, right? Yes. That's Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2. And I remember meeting my wife, and I remember when we talked, my bishop, my pastor, my spiritual father actually said, don't marry him in that wheelchair. And her faith thing was, hey, you know what? I'm not marrying you in a wheelchair. You're going to get out and you will take a knee for me to say yes. If you ever want to marry me, you're going to take a knee.
You're going to kneel to ask me to marry you.
You're going to kneel to ask to marry. And while I'm trying to relearn how to walk so I can walk on game day, I'm like, man, I gotta kneel. I gotta get engaged. Yes. Right? And so I'll never forget, I met my wife, and when that time came, when she graduated, I was able to propose to her and kneel. And I went from kneeling to standing to hugging. And that was kind of like the biggest of my journey. And then I was able to walk. And so these different waves, they came, but it was all knowing that it was God's timing.
This is amazing. Wow. Let me just ask you a few questions in closing. How would you define faith? This is the Real Faith Podcast.
Right.
So if you had to define faith, how would you define it?
Faith is your assurance. Faith is something that you participate in. Faith is righteousness. God credited Abraham righteousness because of his faith.
Wow.
So faith is righteousness. You got to believe, and you cannot have any doubt. It's certain things I won't even say. We was talking about the season, right? Yeah. And you was asking me, are y'all going to have a season? I don't even like saying I don't know, right? Because faith, I believe that whatever comes out of your mouth, the main function of your eyes is to see what you said out of your mouth, because you don't get words go out and find what you said and bring them back and drop at your feet. And so faith is a participation sport. You got to be invested in it.
Well, I love that. Yeah, when I asked you that question, I noticed your answer was carefully put together. You said, we'll have a season.
We'll have a season.
And you even said, I'm not sure what it will look like, but we're going to have a season.
We're going to have a season,
yeah.
right.
Oh, my. Do you have a favorite scripture in the Bible?
Yeah, my favorite scripture is Jeremiah 29:11.
Yeah.
For I know the plans I have for you, to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope.
When you finally, someday far in the future, finally get to heaven, you meet the Father, you're greeted by the Father. What do you hope he says to you at that point?
Well done. Well done. Well done. Come on.
Come on. Timothy, you have inspired me so much today. I didn't realize this. You mentioned briefly that you've written a book.
Yes,
What is
sir.
the name of the book?
Ever faithful, ever loyal.
Ever Faithful, Ever Loyal. Where can we find that
You
book?
can find it on Amazon, and I'll get you one sent up here.
Oh, well, I will go on and buy it because
Yes,
I want to invest, man, in your ministry. If people want to locate you online, where can they find you
You can
online?
find me. My Instagram is Inspired by TA. My Twitter is Inspired by TA. My Facebook is Timothy Alexander.
All right. Did you get all that? Inspired by TA is Twitter and Instagram.
And Facebook, Timothy Alexander, and my website is inspiredbyta.com.
Timothy, every time I get together with you, man, you inspire me on behalf of a lot of people who need this kind of example. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For staying in the fight, for believing persistently. Brother, I'm going to walk out of here so inspired to believe God for impossible things. Anything you want to say in closing today?
Just hold God to his word. God is a rewarder, but you have to hold him to his word, because the Bible says that the person who hears and does is blessed in whatever they do. So whatever it is, you got to hear it and you got something to do. You'll be blessed in whatever you do.
I love this. Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank
Timothy.
you so much.
God bless you, sir. Bye-bye. I absolutely loved this conversation with Timothy Alexander. I've known Timothy for approximately 5-6 years, and his story continues to inspire me. I hope you'll reach out, connect with Timothy, you'll grab his book, and I also hope you'll start doing what Timothy Alexander has done, continues to do, which is to speak God's word over your life. I want to go back to that original quote that I began this podcast episode with. David Goggins talking to us about looking yourself in the eye, standing in front of a mirror, speaking hard truth to yourself. Now, David does it in one direction. I want to do it in another direction. This has become a habit of mine. I'll do something like this. It's inspired by actual statements from the Word of God. Start speaking hard truth to yourself, God's truth to yourself. Things like this. I will be strong, not soft. I will be courageous, not cowering. I refuse to give in to fear, panic, anxiety, worry. I will not give 1 second to discouragement or despair. For greater is the one who is in me than the one who is in this world. I refuse to complain about my problems. I refuse to make excuses for my lack of making progress. I personally own every mistake and every failure, but I also own the fact that because of Jesus, my sin is forgiven, my past is forgotten, and my future is secure. I am not alone. God has already gone before me. God himself is going behind me. God himself is walking arm in arm with me. God has promised that he will never fail. He will never abandon me. When I can't see a way, God will make a way. So Chris, whatever your name is listening right now, lift up your head. Square your shoulders. Take a step of faith. Your destiny is calling. God's call and your promised land are still ahead. Be strong. Be courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not panic. Do not give in to discouragement. The Lord your God goes before you. He is with you. He will never fail or abandon you. He will complete his purpose in your life. Thank you so much for listening to the Real Faith Podcast. Now go out there and put your faith into action. This has been the Real Faith Podcast with Chris Goins. Thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.